Do you know if we have a new meeting notes document?
Yes, we do. I'll paste it in the chat, and I requested the chairs added to the meeting invite. In second, 2026. All right, there it is in chat.
Hello, security people. Happy New Year.
Hey, Rion. That was pretty quiet on my end if you were talking.
Thanks for that. Yes, I was trying to talk and somehow Zoom auto switched down my volume. I was just saying Happy New Year to all them security people.
Yes, likewise.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Good morning.
Hello, hello.
Grant, I thought the little Zarf person over there was a imaginary part, a virtual part of her background. It looked so picturesque.
Uh, I love it. Yeah, I had to order one of those through Fathead.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. All right. I am going to re-add the meeting notes link for the 2026 document. We haven't updated the meeting invite for this yet, but I created a new one this morning. Maybe somebody else also has, but
No, I actually had started filling things in the 2025 document. Let me put a big bold for 2026. See here.
yes, please. All right, and we can get this kicked off as people roll in. Welcome, everyone. Reminder, this meeting is being recorded and posted to LFX and YouTube shortly after. Your participation in these meetings is an agreement to abide by we still need to update this part. Cloud Native Code of Conduct, probably CNCF Code of Conduct. Um, and if there's anybody willing to volunteer as scribes, that would be wonderful. That way we can document for
I'm willing.
posterity. Awesome. Thanks, Evan. And for those who have been here before, existing members, working group reps, etc., just please include which groups you're involved with and any updates. With that said, do we have anybody who is new and wants to introduce themselves? I recognize these names. All right. Agenda for today, Evan, are you still planning to do a Minder presentation?
Yes.
All right. So we
Give me
have
just a moment.
that presentation scheduled for today, and then any remaining time we can use for discussion, questions, and or other updates.
I was just getting all of the attendance and stuff sorted out. Okay, let's see. Share screen somewhere here. Here we go. Window, this window. Okay, so I did not do any slides for this. And this UI is, and much of the other stuff is fairly hot off the press because I couldn't let well enough alone come Monday. So stuff that's broken or janky is partially due to my having moved things around. But Minder is a supply chain security platform with an emphasis not only on detecting issues, but also on being able to fix or remediate them. And it started at StackLock in 2023. StackLock mostly exited the project except for some individual contributors in 2025. I left StackLock and picked it up as sort of a full-time thing. But it's an OpenSSF project. And let me just sort of give you a quick tour of how I suggest people set things up. Although, obviously, as it's a platform, it's fairly programmable and you can do your own thing to a large extent. But coming from the CNCF, I like declarative configuration. So this is my test project, but it has a bunch of stuff loaded so you can see what it actually does. To start with, you can see that I have several different, we call them entities. In this case, these are all GitHub repos. We can also manage release artifacts and pull requests and a few other types of things. In theory, it's broadly extensible, but code needs to be written to handle more of these types of things. And then we have a notion of collections of rules or policies that you want enforced called a profile. So you can see that I have 3 profiles loaded. The Bootstrap profile, if we go over here and look at the profiles, has a selector that says it should only apply to this particular repo. So it's skipped for all the others. The 2 others we have are a set of, amusingly, it's now 6 rules while I call it a top 5. And then the OpenSSF project security baseline analysis set. So these are the profiles. You can see that I have remediation enabled for the Bootstrap profile. I don't have it enabled for the others, which allows me to see what changes it would make. And then I can decide, oh yeah, I want to turn that on. Let's fix all that stuff. Or, ooh, that's a lot of moving. Maybe I want to go and investigate, why is this failing for everything before I turn that on. So if we go back to the status, you can see that the Bootstrap is skipped on all the repos except for this one. And basically what this does is it generates a couple of pull requests that will set up GitHub workflows to sync the policies into the repo and then apply them whenever you commit. So basically we're using Minder to bootstrap infrastructure as code. And from then on, your policies, you can see here's a directory for security baseline, a directory for top 5. We just do basically collect all the diffs and apply them to your local copy so that you can see all the changes that are going to be made if you want to see an example of that. Here is a PR from messing around earlier today, and I discovered that the data sources, which is pulling in extra information, can't have underscores in them. So that was me fixing that. But this was just GitHub action runs, pulls out all that stuff in, and you can see what's going to happen. Now, if we go in and we actually look at some of these policies, let's see. Anyone have a specific policy they're curious about? Otherwise, I'll just pick one. Let's make this just a little bit. So let's see. I'm recommending SemGrep for static application security testing. Okay. Well, that exclamation point is a sign that the rule failed to execute, because this data source function was not properly defined. So we can go in and look at the data source, and it says, call this endpoint with these properties. And then why don't we look at a successful rule like require pull requests to be, for branch changes. That is this require pull request for default branch changes. And you can see that we are ingesting information from the GraphQL API to get all the rule sets. And then we can go in and we can check that you need to do PRs, you can't do force pushes, and you're protected against branch deletion. And then there's a bunch of, this is all Rego, by the way, if you aren't familiar with it. So this is using the same language as Open Policy Agent. And we're looking for branch protections that are active and include the default branch in them in one way, shape, or form. And then we check for pull requests with the right number of reviewers. We check that you have non-fast forward set, which is what force pushes show up as, and that deletion is in there. And if that's not the case, then we can make an API call. In this case, we need to do either a put or a post. So there's a little bit of Go template expansion in here. And then we will update this branch protection rule set, which is the new GitHub hotness for branch protection, to set up all the rules. And so you can see right now, this isn't working. If we go over to profiles, I don't have auto relogin working. We go back to the profiles and we turn on remediation. In a minute or two, this should automatically update. So let's see. Reload this, see if it's working. So it's currently in the process of fixing it. This is for the GitHub repo. So if I go over here and look in the settings, you will see that I now have a rule set that enforces pull requests. And because this is a continuously running service rather than a one-off thing, if I delete this rule set, we'll get a webhook. You can see it registered down here. And when that changes, we will go and say, oh, this doesn't meet the policy. Go put that rule set back. And so you can just play this all day and the computer never gets bored, and eventually you do. So that's basically the goal, is to make it really easy to automatically enforce best practices across a whole bunch of different ecosystems. In some cases, some of these remediations, like enabling Dependabot, require a pull request. So if we look at this, you'll see that we've actually generated a pull request. And in this case, it's turning on Dependabot for GitHub Actions because I have actions in this repo and I don't have other things. If you're curious what that rule looks like, that is this rule here. If a bunch of these files happen, then we say, great, you're all set. Otherwise, we go look for a bunch of different files. And if we find them, then we generate a Dependabot with the files that we found. So this will automatically look for all the ecosystems you've got in your project and then generate a Dependabot YAML so that you're getting updates for all of them. And that's basically the demo of what it does. If anyone is curious, I'm happy to give you a, white glove setup walkthrough, particularly as things, I keep changing things and I keep breaking them. So that's what happens when you're into software. Now, if we
Most important question after our debate at the end of last year. Does your Dependabot PR include cooldown time period? And if so, what is it set to?
It does not yet. I have been meaning to actually set it. I know I'll make Justin mad, but I have been meaning to say, hey, you're getting into this mostly because you don't want to be bothered with all this stuff. So a cooldown is probably going to save you a little bit of grief.
I was generally curious about the policy structure. I think you showed like what is defined as a policy, and then you said, "Hey, like this is just Rego for Open
Yeah.
Policy Agent." Is a policy, was it what you showed considered a like a Minder policy? It looked like it had some metadata in there, and then Rego.
Yes. So there's a couple layers. So first of all, a profile contains references to a bunch of rule types. So these are the different rule types that are being applied. And then if we look at one of these rule types, like the branch PR required, there is a bunch of metadata. There's some information about what do you call to ingest? This one's GraphQL. Most of them use the V3 API because it's much nicer. But in this case, working with the repository rule sets, you end up having to do a whole bunch of API calls if you use V3, and GraphQL lets you express it in one wordy query. So that seemed attractive. Let me go back to one of the others. Let's see. This one call the no. This also. I don't have an example in here. I do have one over in Security Baseline because that checks a lot more stuff. Let's see. Yeah, so this is just calling the repo information endpoint. And we make sure that the clone URL starts with HTTPS because you're supposed to use secure channels for your development stuff. So this is a very simple policy. If anyone needs me to blow that up a little, I can. A little bigger.
And I guess just to finish off my question here, and so if this is a policy, I saw like the remediation that you were discussing, like you enabled that, and basically it was a continuous service, so it was going to make sure everything reconciles. Can or could you run one of these policies imperatively?
There is a tool for running them manually. It's not well documented.
Okay.
It's a one-shot testing tool, basically.
Fair.
And you need to feed it like a GitHub token or something like that.
Awesome. Thanks.
Jen? Jen, I think you're next.
Sorry, I was on mute. Saying I thought I saw a parameter in the policy, in the Rego policy.
You can have parameters, yes.
Yeah. So does it pull from the profile, or could I set that like through the console?
It pulls through the profile. The idea is that different rule types oh, my internet broke, maybe. I don't know. Different rule types may have certain parameters, like how many code reviews are required. And so then in a profile, you'd say, hey, you know, our policy is you need one additional reviewer or 3 additional reviewers or whatever it might be. So that's the use of parameters. The idea is that those would be consistent over time, not like you tweak them all the time. But it does allow you to reuse these things and adjust them in small places. When we started, we actually had a lot of parameters, and some of them were not very sensible. Like force push, you could either set it to, you know, block force pushes or make sure to allow force pushes. And that was kind of silly. And so later on, we went back and we said, no, actually, you know, here, this policy is about blocking force pushes. There's no, you know, reverse policy that is, you know, enforce that you can force push on all of the repos that I've got. That's, you know, why would you do that? And it made understanding what a policy did a lot clearer. You didn't have to dig as deep.
Cool.
I saw Matt had his hand up for a moment. Did you have something, Matt? Or
I didn't know if it rose to the level of asking a question here, but is this a service that is meant to be self-hosted? Like if I've got some projects or repos and I wanted to use this, do I take a dependency on other infra, or does it run?
So I
completely
am running an
independent
instance,
action?
but you can also run your own. It's published as a Helm chart. It has dependencies on Keycloak and OpenFGA. So you need a Postgres database, and you need a couple of other namespaces and deployments. But you know, absolutely you can, and I'm happy to answer questions about how to do that.
Okay, I guess the more direct
Mhm.
question that I'm trying this year not to bury the lead on is, if I wanted to use this, should I go about setting up what you described, or is it meant to be used as is?
I would use the hosted service, unless you are paranoid. Like, it's an app that has the ability to change all your branch protection rules. A GitHub app. How do you feel about that?
Well, yeah,
And
that,
if
that
you-
was
if
kind of
that
what's
makes you
underlying
feel
my
nervous,
question.
you should
Like,
run
am
your
I
own.
seeding? Yeah, like okay.
If it's
But it's
for
really cool. I like it. I love this.
if
this
it's for
is
stuff
great.
where, you know, you're comfortable outsourcing that to, you know, someone else who promises to run it responsibly, then, you know, that's what the hosted service is for. I will stop sharing. I have also been considering a mode where you could give it read access, and then it would spit out a list of, this is stuff you should fix, and you'd have a separate fixer tool
Yeah,
that
like a
had
dry
the
run
scary
option.
write permissions.
That would make me feel
Minder is
more
not currently
comfortable.
architected that way, so it's a bit of additional work, but that's not to say it shouldn't be done.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. There was a slight lag on the audio. That would make it a lot easier to adopt, I think, if you could run it and say, like, this is what it would go do.
Yeah. Unfortunately, GitHub's app permissions model is pretty static, unlike, for example, Android. So you have to upfront say what permissions you want, as opposed to, I only need this base set of permissions now, and then if you ask me to fix things myself, then I'll go ask for more permissions. So, yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, you'd almost need a separate app. That's a
You
pain.
would need two separate apps, yes. And then the authorization for all that gets more annoying. Not to say it shouldn't be done, but go ahead, Brent.
Semi-loaded question because I feel like there's like a never-ending rabbit hole here, but like
Mhm.
how auditable is the kind of like the different states of whether something's compliant or whatever terminology you're
Mhm.
using here across some series of time via the platform?
There is a history API, so you can see the results of evaluations over time.
And you get like could you use that to get the collective state of all of the checks at some historical point?
Yes. Um, it's slightly more obnoxious than I would wish because you basically have to go searching forward and backward for, or I guess backward if you're saying at this point in time, what's the previous evaluation from this point in time for this particular policy? And some might get evaluated more frequently than others. If you go and grab the whole thing, then it's not a problem. If you're trying to ask this particular point in time, you do have to do a little bit of data collection.
That's fair.
But we have the data. We just not quite as easy as you'd like.
How might how might a project or GitHub repo utilize this in CI to establish whether or not a change, I don't even know how that would apply to some of these rule sets. Um, but like, how would you use this in some way in CI to be like, have I regressed?
Um, you could call the Minder API and ask, "Am I currently compliant?" You know, what's the current status for this entity on the different profiles that exist? Um, one of the interesting things is that your state for some of these things may change without there being any Git commits. For example, if someone goes and, turns off branch protection, then, branch protection is off, but there have been no commits at the moment. So, uh, are you secure or insecure? I don't know. It
Yeah.
depends on what your policy is.
Yeah. I imagine this would be the case between like what those rules are meant to accomplish. And again, if you're talking about like the GitHub rule sets and
Mhm.
those various branch protection rules, etc., you're probably not doing this within the scope of maybe a single repository, but maybe one level higher than that of like an organization is trying to monitor
Yeah.
those things.
And it may be a little o organization, not a GitHub organization. So one thing I didn't show here is that you can have multiple GitHub organizations in a single Minder project. So you can apply policy consistently. Now you can do the same thing with Enterprise for $25 a seat a month. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, just adding to this part of the conversation, this is a very real problem in large enterprises trying to prove compliance. In the way I've typically seen it hand wavy explained is, not programmatically. These are the set of controls we have in place in the organization. And the fact that you've sent the email or the communication, you've documented the policy, that counts as the control being enforced. I think, you know, maybe a slightly more technical or pragmatic way would be like if you have the right set of controls, everyone must have two-factor auth enabled. You've restricted the set of people who can actually change whether or not branch protections are enforced down to the one GitHub admin super user in your organization. Then you can say with much more confidence throughout all of time that matters. No one was able to force push and override the branch protection rules and then revert all that stuff right after it happened and malicious
Yeah.
code was merged in, that sort of thing.
If you have a setup, I believe the Eclipse Foundation has some of this, where all of your repos and organizations are managed declaratively. You can say, this is the state that everything is in. Minder is much less interesting. If you have a bunch of people who have permissions to go and adjust various things, then that's really the use case that Minder is aimed at, is folks who don't have their arms in control around everything yet and are trying to sort of anneal towards good. I seem to have gotten stuck on the Google Docs, so I'll need someone else to take the notes. I'm not sure why. Oh, did it just come back? No, it did not.
Yep, that sounds fair. I see more people have joined us since we initially kicked off. So welcome to those who did join us. I'll repost the docs link in the chat for those who want to add themselves to the agenda. But with that, do we have any last questions for Evan on Minder? All right, none heard. Thanks, Evan. Let's see here. I believe there was, I gotta switch gears now. There was an APAC meeting, I think, post our last America's meeting. Is that correct?
I think they canceled it for New Year's, but I'm not sure. I didn't see anything in the meeting notes. Actually, wait. No, there was one. You're right.
Okay, yeah. Now I see the 18th. That one looked to have followed our last America meeting for the year. Looks like they reviewed everything that happened from our meeting, from the America meeting, and then talked about the IAM white paper. Am I reading the right one? Yes, 1218. IAM white paper receiving additional reviews and feedback. Additional reviewer requests have been sent out, and more reviewers are welcome and encouraged. So it looks like they're trying to move forward on that front. That's great. And it looks like they're looking to schedule more community demo material in the new year. I don't see any other notes. Eddie, you did attend that meeting. Is there any other items you wanted to share?
No, I mean just urgent requests for reviews on the IAM white paper, and huge thanks to everybody who has been participating on it. There's been a good uptick in different comments and suggestions and stuff. I know Evan's been very active in there, so huge thanks for all the participation that we have had.
There are at least 2 or 3 people who've been usefully, this needs to be changed or adjusted. I don't know all of them personally, but their comments have been helpful, and it seems like some of the spiffy stuff got confused with the Spire implementation. So fun times.
All right. Sounds great. Moving over to TOC meeting updates. Marina, I'm going to call on you for this one for any notable items.
Yeah, so there was a TOC meeting yesterday. It was recorded for those who are curious. It was mostly kind of beginning of the year, kind of going over current reviews, stuff like that. I think the main thing that I took away for this group is that the TOC is going to be kind of doing a check-in on initiatives beginning of next month. Just kind of checking on the status, making sure that initiatives are things that are like getting completed. And so if anyone here is like working on an initiative, leading an initiative, that's just something to think about in the next few weeks so we can report back accurately about how that all is going.
Absolutely. And I think the only other item that stood out to me was, I think the kind of like general thoughts about like things we could be doing with the project presentations. I think there were some kind of ideas tossed around for what they should look like, and maybe kind of like the differentiation between like high level, a project wants to present, who are they presenting to and where. We've typically done project presentations in this meeting for security related. We want to make that open, you know, kind of more broadly for projects that want to come and present to us for security and compliance related discussions. Maybe they need help with security. Maybe they need help with compliance. Maybe not their only sole purpose is providing security and compliance. That's maybe more of an opinion of mine. So I'm willing to be wrong on that. But there was kind of I think a neat dissection of the high level is great, give people awareness of what's happening in exposure. The chat loop back off sessions kind of provide some of that for those who have watched those. As projects come maybe to the tags to present, there's opportunities to maybe look at how we can maybe add a more of a technical deep dive where possible on projects to make those presentations more meaningful where we can. I think the only outlier there was a call out for the GTR. Is that general technical review?
Yeah.
Having projects pre-populate a GTR, maybe prior to those presentations, provide a method to get some context ahead of time. So maybe we can ask some more informed opinions during those presentations.
And I actually saw something cool in Slack that was kind of related about projects that kind of keep their GTR updated over time, even after like the moving levels process, just as a way to kind of keep users aware of like how this stuff is progressing.
I agree. I think that we've kind of ideated or maybe brainstormed the eventuality that some of this becomes stale after it's occurred. And so it's very nice to see that some projects are putting this into more regular review. Wonderful. Moving over, project updates for the initiatives that we have in progress. So the Supply Chain Security Insights Initiative.
Hey. So I just put in chat the notes from our meeting earlier this week. I had to take something of an unplanned hiatus from KubeCon through December, an unplanned move and some family medical stuff. But I'm back and re-engaged in 2 weeks. So that would be 2 weeks from this past Monday. I'll be giving a demo of the current state of tooling and what we know and what we've discovered thus far. In short, the tooling uses a combination of TypeScript to hit some GraphQL endpoints to get information about repositories, and then to crunch some of the actual found results for using DuckDB, and prototyping using an MIT-based graph database that's like DuckDB, but it's Cypher instead of SQL. And it allows for rapid graph creation using zero copy arrow-backed edges and nodes moving from DuckDB, which is great at munging all kinds of data into tables and then rapidly materializing the graph. So we can ask more interesting questions without the computational complexity and the cognitive overload of writing SQL that walks graphs, which if anyone's ever done that, it's something of a minefield of CTEs and recursion. So Cypher is a much better fit. But that's the current state of things. I'm back from the void in a nutshell.
Awesome. Any questions on Supply Chain Security Insights Initiative? Okay, none heard. Moving over to security assessments.
Nothing major to report. The Kyverno stuff has lost steam, I think, because they got their application to go through. If anyone who's participating in that assessment wants to push to move it along, I think officially we're still waiting for the naive questions phase from Andy Martin to complete. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe now the break's over, this will pick back up. I will say that if it would be nice to have more redundancy and more people involved in the assessment process. And so I would be happy to have someone else try to step in and learn the ropes for the facilitator role, which I promise is actually not very hard to do. It's mostly just being annoying and asking people to do things that they promised to do, like several weeks after they originally promised to do it, and then adapting to that.
That sounds fair. Awesome. Thanks for the updates, Justin. Security controls.
So we've met twice, and most of the outcomes have been around scoping and defining milestones and what type of impact that we want to have when the initiative is finished. So we've created a README in the TOC repo, and I'll just link it here if anyone's interested in taking a look at what our plans are. Our next meeting is Friday, and we already have some work on a fork on the CNCF contribute site for milestone 1, which is transforming the current spreadsheet into machine readable format. And I think that's all I got.
Thank you. Any questions for security controls? All right. Moving over MCP.
I was in the meeting. Is anybody else want to chime in? I can give like a super quick. I'll just say that like there's some discussion about writing the document. I think there's still also some figuring of things out. So I think people that have expertise and want to jump in and help to steer, that might be useful. But there are folks that are doing like, starting to try to write things. but yeah, like more guidance is probably welcome. I've been trying to provide that, but I have only been to, I think, one or two of the meetings. So, yeah.
All right. Any questions on MCP security? All right. And we have Security Slam on our template here. Is there anything to report on?
I'm gonna send a Slack message right now. And then I'll give you a report on it next week.
Noted.
I also have one thing that's not on the template that I'm gonna throw in here, which is the Software Supply Chain Security Technical Community Group, which you can make a really great acronym for. I finally got around to scheduling a recurring meeting for that to be on Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern. I'll put a link here, which should have that in your time zone, hopefully. And then, so yeah, hope to see anyone interested in software supply chain security there. I'll make sure to post in Slack as well about that, so folks can find it. I should
All right.
post in Slack, but yes, it's there too.
So that is the SSC TCG.
Yeah, exactly. It rolls off the tongue. So
Agreed. All right. I think for the delta of new issues that we would have received since the last time we have came through, there has been one that got moved over to our tech security and compliance bucket, which is the compliance use cases white paper. Hubbard has been to this meeting previously as an advocate for that. I think maybe as we kind of kick off evaluating that for revival, we might want to see if we can get Hubbard to join and talk about it. Jen, thank you for putting that message out there. But we can at least, I say, leave the link to the issue in the agenda, and I'll drop it in chat for those who are interested in reading more about it. Up until the time which we can convene and talk about it more, if that sounds fair. All right. Kind of nearing the end here. Any other additional items people want to check in and discuss? Any other agenda topics?
I do want to know how tall that Zarf is behind you.
Say probably like 2.5 feet. It's on a couch.
Okay. It's on a couch. That's awesome.
Not quite the kind of thing you can leave in the hallway and it'll frighten people, but
I feel like there's been a moment where I like walked into the room in the dark and saw the eyes glaring at me. That might have surprised me a little bit. Cool. Outside of that, if we have any ideas for, I think we do have it. Actually, that's a lie. I think there is a presentation scheduled for APAC. Is there one for? I need to go look.
it looked like there was an America's one from Andrew Nesbitt on
That's right.
Git packages.
There was one. Yeah. So it looks like there may be something scheduled for next week. We can reach out, make sure that's still happening. But if there are any ideas for anybody who wants to either present more long form, if you will, kind of for the time that we have during this meeting. Or if you want to do a community demo and present something more in the 5 to 10 minute presentation space, please feel free to raise your hand now or drop ideas or comments into the chat or Slack, and we can get you on the agenda. With that said, we can hit the end of the topics for today. Happy New Year. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Brent.
Oops.